one more segment for this week on Bang the Book Radio. That is with Brent from DSI Sportsbook, recorded on Thursday evening. The odds report. Man, a lot going on here with Super Bowl 53. We talked about sharp action. We talked about risk management on the side and total for this game. Really, really fun and informative segment. Been great to chat with Brent all season long on the odds report. So here is our final odds report of the season with Brent from DSI Sports. All right, I'm joined now by Brent, the head risk manager at DSI Sportsbook, for this week's version of the odds report. Brent, how's it going today, man?
Doing wonderfully well. I'll be cliche and say feeling super. Really looking forward to this game, just from a work perspective and just the game itself. I'm really looking forward to the game this Sunday.
It was groan-inducing, but a good way to start here with the odds report. And we'll go ahead and recap what we talked about last week in terms of sharp plays. The Patriots were a pick 'em for a little while, a very, very short while. That was a sharp play. We also talked about the first half under 28.5 as another sharp play. Before we get into some of the props and some of the other stuff about this game, what are some of the other sharp plays that you've seen from a side or total standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, on the game itself, and again, we talked about the play on New England at a pick at even money. That was, again, like from a guy who typically is going to buy back the other way. It hasn't happened yet, and I think for most people, the kind of window of opportunity, if you were thinking or waiting for New England to get up to like -3 on their own and then take the Rams +3, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think the numbers kind of settled where it's going to be. If anything, I would expect it to come back down. So I think we're probably going to see, it may have happened already that this customer somewhere else perhaps bet back the Rams the other way, either on the money line, getting a higher price like a +125 or some of that, or maybe bought the Rams to the +3. But I'm pretty sure, just knowing the profile of that customer, that he probably got off. I think it was just a price grab at that time. The under, the first half, I mean, you see that we're at like under 28.5 -110 is where that sharp play came, and we're now pretty much market wide. Everyone is under 27.5 -120. So it's moved a full point on that first half total, and also 10 cents in the juice. Since then, kind of consistent with that as well, I've had the first quarter Patriots at a pick -120. So the Patriots first quarter -120, that's now pretty much up to -130 or -135. The sharp did grab that, the Patriots at -120, and also staying consistent with the first half under was the under 10.5 -135. That's now -145. So a couple more sharp plays that kind of stay consistent with with the earlier plays on the first half and the game itself. And if you look at how the games have gone for the Patriots, their previous game as well, they do tend to, if they get the ball first, they have kind of had like a ball control time meeting kind of drive. That was the case. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, when they did the same thing. I guess it was against the Chargers, where they went like 7 minutes on the opening drive before they punched it in from the one or something like that. So, that's kind of like the Patriots' way to go. And I think, too, this is something I think we probably even talked about this last year, and it just kind of came up again, something that I had forgotten about, is if you look at Belichick and Brady, since they've been together in the Super Bowl, they've scored still a combined total of 3 points in the first quarter. So that kind of gives the impression that they definitely start out in terms of like a feeling out process. Now, that may not bode well for the Patriots at a pick -120, but for the under, that certainly kind of plays consistent to that. It's something that I kind of, when I read it today, I remembered, oh yeah, we talked about that last year. Yeah, and I guess they didn't score in the first quarter last year's Super Bowl either.
Last year, they scored their 3 points in the first quarter.
That was the 3? Okay.
They had gone 7 in a row without scoring in the first quarter, got to 3 last year. Of course, we'll see, what they do here in this Super Bowl. But something that we've talked about a lot here throughout the week on Bang the Book Radio, Brent, and you already alluded to this, it is fascinating to see how the risk management side of things is setting up for the spread on this game. Because it's 2.5, pretty much market wide. The market is inundated with Patriots money. Some places 75-25, others 80-20, maybe even others still 85-15. And yet, pretty much every operator out there, certainly every operator in the offshore market, unwilling to go to that +3. And you just said that you don't think you'll get there either.
Yeah, I don't think so. And again, when we talked last week, I believe my count on the spread was 85% of my bet count. Now, that's the actual number of bets. So 85% of my bet count was favoring the Patriots. Now today I'm at 78%, so I am getting a bit of a trickle back towards the Rams. And again, you kind of assume like the day of the game is just going to be, we're going to be flooded as well. So if that trend continues, that won't be bad for us in terms of getting more Rams money. Again, 85% last week, down to 78% of my bet count now. Last week as well, our money in terms of the actual dollar volume was 89% favoring the Patriots. That's down to 84% now. Not included in that number, I am going to mention that we do have a six-figure bet the other way on the Rams. So that was a real big bet, obviously one way the Rams, which really brings my numbers kind of back in line. We still have a liability to the Patriots, but now in terms of my money itself, that 84% isn't quite as big as, it's quite smaller than that because of that one big bet that we took the other way. Now, again, I think the fact that, I'm still 2.5 and I'm actually using minus 115 right now on New England. Most places out there are just a 2.5 flat. I think you could find probably out there if you go to, if you hunt hard enough to, the kind of place that doesn't welcome sharp action at all, you may find like a 3.15 or something like that out there. But I just, if you look back at how kind of the AFC versus NFC Super Bowl line has been all season long, it's been a line where you had the NFC just, a small favorite. We kind of opened this game based on that as well. And I think there's just a general feeling that that number was the right number. You're talking about -1 on the Rams, down to 2.5 where it is right now. So that's a real big swing. And again, I think that in combination with the fact that the counts in terms of the bet counts starting to tick back the other way, kind of give credence to the fact that the 2.5 is probably going to sit where it is, if not even go down to 2.
Well, I think what's so interesting here is that it does seem like a lot of outlets out there are willing to dig their heels in and be exposed on the Patriots side. And you and I were talking about this before we hit the actual start record button here, that, if this was a regular season game, it's Rams -1, which is, even where you open for the Super Bowl, maybe even Rams -1.5 for a neutral site game. But it's the Super Bowl. So it moved in Brady and Belichick's favor. There's that experience edge. So from a risk management and bookmaking standpoint, you're already sitting on a 3 to 3.5 point overlay. Is that factoring into the equation here of why, you and why you think other entities are willing to dig in?
I think it's a combination of digging in just because we feel the opening number was right. We feel also, at least what I've seen, is that the trend is starting to come towards Rams money in terms of the bet count and the money as well, going the other way. And again, you also don't want to move too much. I mean, obviously you're not too worried really going through like the 1.5s to 2.5s and stuff like that. So, getting on 3, you'd really hate to see, have to go to 3 to get that buyback and have New England by 3. It would just kind of be one of those things that I think most of us right now, get the same feeling in the fact that the money's starting to come back the Rams' way, and probably, I mean, if there was any value on New England, that was definitely gone as soon as they became the favorite, I think. So it's a combination of those things. And again, everyone's kind of has their own, their own profile. And for us, like I said, we did take a very substantial bet the other way on the Rams, so that kind of helps us out as well. So things are just kind of trending the right direction for us right now. And again, I just get a feeling that this number might, if anything, I think it's going to tick down as opposed to ticking up.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like playing chicken, with the sharps that are out there. I mean, because they've been waiting on a 3, and any place that has gone to 3, as long as they accept sharp action, they've pretty much pounced on that 3. So you're sort of in a leverage position almost where you can say, hey, either take 2.5 or, I'm sorry, you're not going to get to bet the game. Or maybe you just play the money line. I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity and the ability to talk with a risk manager here about it, because I think this is one of the most fascinating storylines in the business over the last several years.
I think it's important to note, something we haven't touched on as well, is that how quickly this line moved from the get-go. So the amount of money that was written at, say, New England -2 and -2.5 is really like massively substantial. This line from the opener of the Rams -1 to New England -2 or 2.5, it was about 60 minutes, Adam, for that to move. So it moved so quickly and kind of found its home. Like I said, within an hour, it was at 2.5. And so we've written so much action at the 2.5. We're really, I mean, the vulnerability and the liability at like the game landing, 1 or 2 either way really isn't that much. I mean, we push on a lot of volume on 2 for sure, but the rest is written at 2.5. I mean, if you take 2.5 and 2 with New England -2 and 2.5. That's probably, I'm going to say 95% of our action at least have been written at those numbers. So this number really, really moved quickly.
Yeah, it really did. And, obviously, hey, we still have, and you and I are recording this on Thursday evening, we still have, almost 3 days before the Super Bowl actually kicks off. So we will see what happens out there. We'll see what
it's almost like a kid in the car. It's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Can we just get to the game, please?
I mean, and I imagine for you,
with more days.
I imagine for you with all the numbers and everything going into this, I mean, it's a lot. It's kind of overkill in some respects. And, that's probably a good segue into talking about the props, which, the props will help you kind of spread out some of your exposure a little bit, which is kind of nice. I mean, what's the action looking like on the prop market?
I mean, our prop action is always really, really good. I think one thing, that people have to look at in terms of just like, in terms of what they're going to be betting with the props, you kind of, in terms of a better yourself, you don't want to get in trouble where you're betting the game under, but you're betting all the player props over, or you're betting the Rams to win, but you're betting Edelman, Brady, and Gronkowski over. I think so. What that kind of leading into is the way this line move has gone in terms of the way it's gone in New England, the way the bet count has been. There's no surprise that where we're loaded, where we have liability is mostly on the New England stuff. I mean, I do have pretty much all the the what I'm going to call public props were one-sided. They're all your brand name New England players. Excuse me. I've got my liability stands where Gronkowski receiving yards over, Brady over passing yards, Edelman's receiving yards over. So that kind of stays consistent with in terms of the the fact that people are betting New England. And again, it's those brand name kind of guys where you're getting bet over, which again is just no surprise at all. We do have, a couple of sharp prop bets as well. I don't really like the fact that I've got sharp money on, the James White receptions over, because he's one of those guys who the Patriots use really, really well. Again, we talked about, I think, the opening drive versus the Chargers. I almost said San Diego again with the Chargers, where I myself, I think I bet his receiving yards for the game. I bet like over 44.5, I think it was. And at the end of that first drive, he had like 45 and they had scored a touchdown. So he's one of those guys who they use really, really well. We have his receptions at over 5.5. We had the juice towards the over at -130, and that's gone up. Either the juice has been moved or you're up to 6 in terms of the receptions. His yards as well has gone up from like 45.5 all the way up to like 49.5 or 50. So I do have sharp money on his props over. And maybe kind of staying consistent with their, the Rams really not giving up big plays, and New England not being much of a big play team with Cooks. Cooks receptions, his stuff going under. That was some sharp stuff as well. So under 5.5 receptions for sharps. Maybe looking at some sharp guy play as well was Woods going over 72.5. So I kind of like that I got Woods over 72.5 from a sharp guy. I got Goff over 285.5 passing yards, and Anderson, his rushing yards over as well. With respect to Anderson, excuse me, that's a bit of a public play as well, has been going against Gurley. Now it's interesting because Gurley, he was such a vital cog in that offense, and all the reports say he's fine, and he's been on the sidelines so much. So I'm getting more public players in terms of my bet count going under his rushing yards. We had 67.5 is where I took shots, mostly just public money on that under, but I don't really like that under as well because it kind of ties into Anderson with the over.
Yeah, and that's always interesting, to see, because we've talked about this a lot here this week on the show. We all know what Brady and Belichick and the Patriots do in the Super Bowl. Offensively, they can spread it around, but Brady always seems to find that one guy. Maybe it is James White. And then defensively, they always take something away. And that's the guessing game that we're all playing here. So are you finding, and obviously you just mentioned 6 guys that have some sharp action and, 4 guys that have some pretty heavy public action. Are you finding that among the skill players, things are pretty spread out overall?
I mean, amongst the skill guys, like I said, the brand name guys, I'm getting a lot of overs as well. Like I said, the thing with White, I didn't, I don't like having that over money on him, and I kind of expected it to come, but I just kind of wish we could have maybe put a higher open number on that, just because I think he's a guy that they use so well. You look at the Rams too in terms of the game against the Saints. Kamara had like 13 targets and had 11 catches out of the backfield in that game. So that's kind of a, an indication of the fact that can go against the Rams that way. It is really interesting just because you don't know how this game is going to play out. The Rams get good pressure up the middle on Brady, then he's probably going to have to dump the ball off more. He doesn't like pressure up the middle that well, and with Donald and Sue, who knows how that's going to go. I think defensively and offensively, both these teams, they really do match up, quite well. I think they take, things away from each other, and they also give up some stuff that's really puts them both susceptible. And really, I think, getting pressure on the quarterback is going to be key. I mean, they both rely on timing and stuff like that. They're probably the Patriots more so than the Rams. They're not really, a big deep threat kind of guy. And the Rams have a really solid offensive line, so they can run those backs up the middle and stuff like that as well. So this is really an intriguing game for me. And you look at the Rams, like defensively, with their corners of Talib and Peters, I think they do a real good job, and that's why I'm on side with these unders in the first half and stuff like that as well, because I think it's going to be quite a feeling out process. Now, I mean, the game itself could be like the Patriots game last time around when they the first half was almost a snooze fest, and then the second half ended up being a blowout and a shootout and stuff like that. So you see stuff like that happen all the time, and that could be what happens this time around. I wouldn't shock me at all if we saw kind of a slow first half, if you will, and then a second half that was much like the Chiefs game. I think halftime was 14-0 for New England, and then like all hell broke loose in terms of that game with the Kansas City. So in terms of bettors and what they're looking at, I think you kind of have to look for value going under brand name guys, and maybe if you're going to go over with some guys, you have to kind of find the second, third tier guys who not your Edelmans, not your Gronkowskis and stuff like that. Find value in guys like that, and again, just be really be consistent with what you think the game's going to be going. Like I said, if you're betting game over, you like the over, kind of bet your props that way. If you like New England to win it, well, your props should kind of be consistent with that as well.
I got a handful of questions left for you here, Brent, on the Super Bowl. We talked a lot about the side. What's going on with the total for this game? I know we mentioned some sharp action, first half under, maybe some first quarter under sharp stuff as well. Is the full game kind of following suit?
Yeah, the full game, I've got, no surprise, of course, especially with these two offenses. I do have my wager count favoring the over. Again, this one opened, I didn't open as high as the market where they were 58. I think we were around 57.5, and it did kind of slowly tick down to 56.5 where I am right now. I do know that some places touched on 56 and some are there right now. My bet count is about 60% favoring the over right now. So about 60-40 favoring the over. My money's pretty close. I'm not really in a bad spot. I am using 56.5, and I wouldn't be surprised again, because you just figure there's going to be, most of the sharps have probably had their, their kick at the can so far in this game, unless something dramatic happened in terms of, someone grabbing, the line getting beat up to New England -3 and sharps coming back the other way. But other than something dramatic like that, I think the sharps have probably played this game as much as they're going to. So it's up to the public now. And again, that trend would be for them to, bet the game over. And based on that, I could see this number ticking up to 57. That wouldn't shock me.
All right. Now, as you mentioned there, a lot of public money coming in, maybe a lot of the sharp money has already extracted value. I'm sure they'll still be lurking as they always are. What percentage of your total handle do you think you've gotten here so far as we're recording on Thursday night?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say I'm higher than 50%, but not a whole lot higher than that, just because so many people, there's kind of, unless you think you're stealing something and finding value, you're going to hold on to your money so you can bet all the, the basketball games and let's not forget hockey and stuff like that all week long. So, I mean, people are slowly betting this game, but what's going to happen on Sunday is just going to be a flood of action. And remember, one kind of important thing with this game in terms of line movement and stuff like that you just, you talk about all season long how, the market is pretty much dominated by sharp money, not public money. It takes a lot of public money or a real big bet to kind of move a number. But the Super Bowl is kind of the exception to that rule, in that it's it's the one game where the market is absolutely overridden and dominated by public money. So no matter where the sharp money comes in, even like right now, if I took money, sharp money on the Rams plus 2.5 minus -0.5 where I am right now, even if I took a substantial sharp bet there, I'd probably still stay exactly where I am in terms of the number, because I know based on my bet count and where my position is still, I'm probably still going to get New England money up until kickoff.
Now, the last thing I want to ask you about with this game here, Brent, this is kind of an interesting thought that actually just crossed my mind a little bit. I go to a Super Bowl party with my dad. I'm sure a lot of people are at Super Bowl parties. What does the in-game wagering look like for the Super Bowl? Because a lot of people have a lot of bankroll tied up pregame. Do you anticipate a lot of in-game wagering?
Yeah, it'll be insane, Adam. Like, I mean, I obviously can't place a dollar number on it, but it's going to be bonkers. That's my dollar number. Bonkers. Yeah, it'll be crazy. I mean, again, it's just people are watching the game, and regardless of what your ticket is on the game, people are betting the stuff in progress all the time. It's gonna be a nonstop betting all day long.
All right, so that was the last question about the Super Bowl. Now I have one more question for Brent, the risk manager. I ask our guests usually at the end of the college football season, at the end of the NFL season, what do you feel like you did well? What do you feel like you could do better the next year? What are you going to try to look to carry over? This is an ever-evolving industry. So from a risk management standpoint here, this, NFL and college football season, Brent, is there anything that, you've seen that has changed in the industry, or anything that, maybe you feel like you can do differently as a risk manager?
I think one of the keys for us is just identifying early in the season who kind of like the trendy teams might be. The public is very quick to fall in love with a team, and they're very quick to hate a team as well. So identifying those teams early is very important for us. I think like the Patriots, for example, they're always a public team, but they're not kind of like the in vogue team as much as you would think. When the Chiefs, for example, I mean, when they started out, I think how they ended their season last year was was quite a boom, if you will. And this year that kind of that trend continued, and as soon as they had a couple losses near the end of the season, people were quite sour on them right away. You talk about the Cleveland Browns, for example. That's one of those teams that we probably could have responded to quicker once Baker Mayfield took over. Those numbers, we just kind of Sharps had always found value in Cleveland just because they were such a bad team, whereas the public kind of got on that as well when Mayfield came out. So just kind of being quicker in terms of responding to those numbers is it's kind of the trends of people and where they're going. Jacksonville, I mean, how high people were on Jacksonville. And when you get burnt by a team, Jacksonville's a perfect example. You go so cold on them as a public bettor right away. Just same thing with Cleveland. Once people fell in love with Cleveland, it really did not matter what the number was. You were going to get public money all over Cleveland. So that's one of those things too. And sometimes, like this game, for example, you've just got to stick with your guns in terms of, what you think the right numbers are. And that's kind of what we're doing right now with this Rams game. And we feel like that opening number, I mean, throwing out, all the action that's come in. If we started over and looked at this game and thought what would be the right opening number, we probably would have come up with the same number. So much like bettors, you kind of have to stick with your guns sometimes. We have the benefit, of course, so that we can move our numbers. And of course, bettors have the option of passing a game or playing a game.
Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook. I know this has been one of our listeners' favorite segments throughout the year. I always enjoy it. It's great to get that perspective from the other side of the counter. Thank you so much for taking your time here on a weekly basis with us, bud. Really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with you here again in about 7 months.
Yeah, awesome, Adam. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you every week. Looking forward to a fantastic game on Sunday, too. I think this game from a matchup and what could happen in this game, I think is really, really intriguing. I mean, you've got such a good kind of, narrative with, Brady and Belichick, the kind of old school, the experience versus the new guys, Goff and McVay. And I think part of what's kind of driving this number as well is the fact that experience is such a big deal. Obviously, that favors Brady and Belichick, but we got these new kids in the block, so we're going to see what happens and let them play the game.
Brent, like I said, man, appreciate everything. Thank you so much, bud. I would tell you to enjoy your off season, but you and I both know that there isn't one in this business.
There isn't one, yeah.
So enjoy your summer, buddy, and we'll talk to you again in the fall.
Awesome, Adam. Thanks again for having me on.